I'm with Roy Herissier, a long-serving member of the States as a deputy. How many years, Roy?
15.
Out of it for the last 2 years. We're now at the end of 2016. We're approaching the next 2017, 2018. It's going to be another election, an all-island election. What are your views on it? What do you see? Are you optimistic about what's going to happen?
Not that optimistic, because obviously people are fairly disillusioned with politics at the moment. The Council of Ministers has become a very entrenched body. It's lost touch with people. I don't see many people, if any, on the Council who I would say are consensus people. In other words, people who deviate, if necessary, from the party line and can bring good, strong arguments and views to bear. And I think the system, unfortunately, has stagnated.
How can alternative views penetrate the Council of Ministers? How can they be got? Obviously, if you have different views, they're not tolerated in the Council of Ministers. So how can you have people out there who get elected, who've got different points of view? How can they have any influence, realistically?
Well, the formal mechanism at the moment, obviously, is scrutiny. And I think we have someone who is very keen on scrutiny, and I think it's got a lot of potential. I think more and more it's got to be given more power. And I think probably scrutiny panels have got to do what they've shown some signs of doing. They've got to push more and more legislative proposals where their reports are rejected. They've got to push for more states debates on general issues. Sometimes these debates go off the rails. They become sort of rather waffly exchanges of platitudes, but I think they've got to push much more for that, so that decisions and big areas are aired a lot more in the States at the moment.
Well, one of the ironies of scrutiny is, I'm a great observer of scrutiny.
Yes, indeed.
And the latest decision to agree to a £500-600 million hospital had a very rough deal from scrutiny. Well, one of the problems with scrutiny, they couldn't get the information in time in order to scrutinise it properly. So when it finally came to the crunch, that was pushed through by the minister, the hospital, to get through. Let's just get on with it, approach to it, let's hurry. The biggest financial decision this island's ever made. I mean, how would that get through the scrutiny process and the states process on that sort of basis? Just hurry along and do it. It was everything, it was so hurried, that final decision.
Well, obviously the panel was under pressure, but I suppose they could have said, look, we're not going to move on this till we've had our reports and we've had the extra information we want from you, because we don't believe that tomorrow you're going to turn the sod over or put in the planning application. Things don't work that fast, so we know we've got more latitude than you are giving us. So dig in and let them produce the information, or let them get the information, and then bring the whole thing
even if
to the
they had
States.
some very strong words were said at scrutiny, very critical of the ministers involved for not bringing the information forward. But they've got the same problem now with the financing of it. They've got to vote the 600 million or the 1,000 million is effectively going to be over 40 years. They're going to vote that in January. Again, scrutiny was saying, but we haven't had time to scrutinise it. We haven't had time to analyse it. And they were pleading for more time. Whether they've got more time, I don't know, but it just shows the decision on the hospital itself could have been delayed. It doesn't make any difference, does it?
Yeah, it could have been delayed, and not in a never-ending cycle of delay, because, as we know, the States was notorious for that, and may still be, actually. But certainly when you're dealing with the biggest funding decision ever, I would have thought you need to take your time.
What also surprised me about that, apart from scrutiny, there was one constable who came out who was on scrutiny, and he jumped ship on that because he was so outraged at what was being planned with the hospital. Much as I'm not a great fan of the constables, he was very outspoken against it, saying that it shouldn't be built where they're proposing to build it and so on. But I was surprised he didn't get a lot more vocal support from people outside with states members to actually lead a bit of a. But they seem to fall in line. Most of them fall in line. Oh, let's get on with it. Seemed to prevail. That was all they seemed to worry about.
They did, and part of the problem is with individual members is they lack often the resources. Although obviously this constable did come up with a proposition. They lack the resources, and also they lack what I would call the network of support. We're not very good, the non-council members in the States. We were not very good at coming together and looking at issues as a group.
I mean, it screams the need for a party, doesn't it? And this is one of the issues I want to discuss with you. Still, they're playing around. There is a little quasi-party here, the Reform Party. But between now and the election, 2 years, less than 18 months' time, it's not going to present itself as a realistic party, is it? Not to challenge the Council of Ministers.
No, partly because there's an aversion in Jersey to the kind of policies it has, to socialist policies, basically, and it would have to be a more centrist party, in my view, if it were to get a broader base of
But
support.
on something is, you see, the funding for the hospital has really got to me because it's such a huge amount of money, and they are talking about £1 billion over 40 years. Besides which, they've already borrowed £250 million for housing, which is being paid back. So the debt that this island is getting involved in is something like, I mean, Jersey was always no debt, or we've got money in the kitty, the rainy down fund, we've always got money in the kitty. It's just taking on debt to a degree which just is so against what, whilst I've been here, is with the way the Jersey man thinks. We don't have debt.
Yeah, the Jersey man and the Jersey woman.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's funny the way we've just sort of slid into this situation.
So it doesn't have to be a socialist view against it. It's just a practical view. Accountants, lawyers, they ought to be saying, this is not the way we carry on here, not having this amount of debt. You'd thought, I am amazed that there's not incredible dancing in the streets to say, well, this is not acceptable.
Yeah, I would accept that. And the other thing is, I mean, for years and years now, we've talked of public sector reform. Programs have been launched. There is one active at the moment. There have been some culling at the manual worker level at TTS, for example. But again, people's dream, and it is a dream, that the civil service could be reduced, particularly in the upper echelons, where it's felt it's become fairly overstaffed and, in some respects, very overpaid. Where it's felt that that would happen.
But another thing,
people feel disillusioned because that programme hasn't worked.
One of the bees in my bonnet, and it's being graphically shown now, they had because of the European Union, the changes that are going to take place, they're having to re-look at everything. They had a fund of 1-point-something million initially. That's already gone up to £4 million. The fund, the local fund that Senator Balash and his team have got together, in order to try to address all these uncertainties. Now, this is the international aspect of being Jersey. I mean, it's not only related to finance, it's related to just being here. There is an international dilemma. Local, national and international responsibilities. For any states member, that's a huge responsibility to take on, isn't it? How can a mere mortal deal with these issues? How can you have an idea about it?
Well, basically, you rely to a certain extent on your civil servants, obviously. You rely on... I hesitate to say it, but you rely on experts. But you also rely on politicians being people who can ask the right questions.
And be prepared to make the decisions.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that's come out again about the hospital. The report, the unfavourable report that came out insofar as unfavourable, whereas you've got the lack of a team here, lack of the management team, the lack of the professional guidance. In other words, the local people are not up to the job. You've got to recruit more. Now, whenever you get anything complicated, you have to recruit more. Mm-hmm. And if it's something like negotiating for the European Union, the fact that they've got the budget increase from 1-point-something million to 4 million, obviously they're going to be employing lots of people to do this work, aren't they? It's not within the local capability, is it, to do it?
I'm not sure that, although I don't know the inner workings of Senator Balash's mind, obviously, but I'm not sure it's all about bringing in outsiders. Obviously, you will buy in opinions. Obviously, you will want to talk to people who've got their ear to the ground, as we do now, their ear to the ground in Europe.
Well, you spoke at a conference.
And you can, and local people can, I would have thought, and should lead that.
You spoke at a conference in 1998, and there were some quite heavy lawyers on there from outside, even then, looking at the relationship of Jersey with the European Union, how it might develop in the future.
Yes.
And there was some very interesting stuff in that report of that conference, which is very relevant to the discussions that are now taking place about, for example, Protocol 3, how virtually then it was a meaningless document in 1998.
Yes.
So these thoughts have been around a long time, so they've had plenty of time for Jersey people to digest them, but they don't seem to have digested them.
Well, no, because I don't think at that point independence didn't, for example, wasn't an issue. We know it rumbles on in the background, and quite clearly.
I think he's going to keep going backwards and forwards with his trolley.
Quite clearly, one of the interesting things is whether certain people are using this as a way of pushing an independence agenda, of course.
Yeah.
But I would hope, if they are truly as impartial as they should be, that they will present a set of options. You know, they will say, we've researched the options insofar as we can.
Yeah, it's a bit like I was trying to keep coming back to the hospital. We've researched the options for the hospital, and it's going to be this site here, not really having looked at the other 20 in any detail whatsoever. So the various options, whatever they might be, there's not going to be many options for the European Union, I don't think. But you may be correct. I mean,
a lot obviously is going to depend on what the UK eventually decides to do.
That's right. I mean, this is another aspect of it. These very interesting, these decisions which are taking place in the Supreme Court, which even now at that level, they have implications for Jersey, because it's being declared whether the UK can make decisions for itself, even, never mind whether they can make decisions for Jersey. And bearing in mind, I keep saying, it's not only Jersey, it's Guernsey and the Isle of Man.
Yes.
Of the three crown dependencies. We're not same islands, we've all got different needs and requirements.
Yes.
So one solution will not fit all.
No.
And bear in mind also the British Overseas Territories, about a dozen places, all clamouring to have their situations looked at and protected. Ironically, most of them are finance centres. And again, finance centres don't go down too well in Europe with some countries. So it is an incredibly complicated issue about resolving the European Union. And there isn't the talent within the island to do it, is it? It isn't here.
No, it probably there isn't enough talent to do it. And you'd expect, where there are once-in-a-lifetime kind of issues and decisions that have incredible importance, you wouldn't expect the civil service to be staffed up to deal with that, on a regular basis. That there are times when you have to call in expertise.
Well, in fairness to Senator Balash, he did call that conference on independence. He did, or the study of independence. He did sort of prepare the ground for it quite a few years ago. I mean,
but the big issue is for teams like our Brexit team and for teams like the hospital, is the nature and the quality of the political direction they're getting, surely. And where's that political direction coming from? Is it because one person has an obsession or interest in a particular way of going forward?
Well, of course, unfortunately, we know that the one issue which dominates everything is finance. So the one great issue which dominates the European Union negotiations is protecting the finance industry. Or, if possible, as they're talking about, expanding the finance industry to make it even more dominant when the whole island knows it's already too dominant now. It's killing everything else. So if they get the opportunity, they want it more so. Which, have they asked the public? Has the public expressed a view on that?
No.
Has Reform expressed a view? Reform Group, have they expressed a group on it?
Well, you'll have to speak to them, but not as far as I know.
No, this is because it's 2 years to the next election. This is one of the themes I want to. How realistically can people get an alternative view across?